And also, I want to make it known that we got this interview in the can before the disbanding of Ween, so that was not talked about. What name do you go by as a person?
Aaron.
You said that with a bit of an edge to it.
Well, I've been having an identity crisis, so this whole thing is Aaron Freeman.
Yeah?
Oh, yeah.
From here on out, you're Aaron Freeman.
Yes, for sure.
Well, that's interesting, the slight tinge of anger.
Yes, right?
With the Aaron Freeman? Like you're carrying a little baggage behind the... You're carrying some Gene Ween baggage?
I'm carrying some Gene Ween baggage, yes.
As the lyricist and vocalist for almost 90% of all Ween material, I think it's safe to say Gene Ween, or Aaron Freeman, is a generational talent when it comes to creative output. And by Ween's La Cucaracha era, when the dividing lines were drawn and it became easier to differentiate between Gene songs and Dean songs, I think many began to realize that Gene's knack for melody played a huge part in Ween's success. Aaron had been making solo material dating back to his project Synthetic Socks, which dropped 2 cassettes in the mid to late 80s. 1985's A Day at the Mall and 87's Synthetic Socks saw Aaron doing spoken word, Daniel Johnston-esque lo-fi folk featuring droning organs.
Cops like to arrest and cops like to carry stuff. Cops.
And creepy dungeon synth. And honestly, I would say it's slightly more accessible than anything Ween was doing during this period. In the liner notes for the second Synthetic Socks cassette, the then teenage Aaron writes, "This cassette has been recorded over a span of about 10 years. I'm still in high school and plan to move where the trees live. Well, buddy, have I got news for you." While there's not necessarily a mind-blowing standout from Synthetic Socks, I am a huge fan of Can I Speak to Mark with Electricity, which ends with the entirety of Rock and Roll All Night by Kiss bleeding through, due to Aaron reusing cassettes. As Ween took off in the 90s, Gene invested more and more of his energy into the band instead of solo endeavors. And conversely, when things started to get rocky in the late 2000s, Aaron began to strike out on his own once again. The first live set, billed as the Gene Ween Band, came on December 10th, 2008, in Teaneck, New Jersey, where Gene was joined by Dave from Ween, Joe Russo, and Scott Metzger. Setlist would often feature Ween rarities like Mountains in Buffalo, Jeaner's Gone, DC Won't Do You No Good, and Ooh La, along with a healthy helping of David Bowie and Billy Joel covers. The Gene Ween Band continued playing through May 2009, before Ween's touring schedule picked back up, forcing Gene and Dave to put GWB on the back burner. On May 8, 2012, months after wrapping up Ween's 2011 tour, Gene announced the release of Marvelous Clouds, a soft rock Rod McEwen tribute album, mixed by 12 Golden Country Greats producer Ben Vaughn.
I think I've been naturally gravitating towards getting into more of a soft rock or an easy thing. Starting with, on the last Ween record, I wrote Your Party, and that was sort of me going off into this weird direction, and I'd like to pursue that. So the Rod McEwen stuff is right up my alley. It's exactly the kind of music that I like to make.
While personally I'm not a huge fan of McEwen's poetry, Marvelous Clouds is a fairly fun and breezy listen, though it being a cover album does slightly limit the accolades I'm comfortable laying at its feet. The second track on the album, Gene, is kind of interesting in that the subject's name is a homophone with Gene with a G, so it's almost like he's singing an ode to himself, which is nice, I guess. Gene is also probably my favorite track on the album. Love the minimalist production and that mournful accordion. The title track, Marvelous Clouds, opens with a collage of old film serial war sound effects, before transitioning into what sounds like a swinging 6/8 musical theater number. I think this one would have fit right in on the Aladdin soundtrack. I will say, throughout the album, Aaron's voice sounds incredible. Clear and clean, occasionally soaring. I'm not a huge fan of the spoken word moments where he delivers the lyrics in a sort of smug inflection.
Friendly sometimes, but you can never be sure.
At any rate, it's no Pollo Asado. That said, I have found myself revisiting the project for tracks like Love's Been Good to Me, whenever I'm craving some smooth, soulful pop rock. And at the end of the day, I'm glad Gene and the fellas were having fun. But then, just 2 weeks later, on May 29th, Gene, now apparently Aaron Freeman once more, announced he was leaving Ween to focus on his solo material, though we now know it was more about taking a break from the atmosphere of hard partying on the road that Ween had fallen into, which is something we'll get into later on.
So what do you got planned now? Do you, when you do an album like this, do you send it over to Mickey and say, dig this?
No, I haven't.
Not for any
He's
advice.
heard it, he likes it.
Oh, that's it?
Yeah.
You guys are still buddies?
Yeah. We've known each other since we were 15, so, we go do our own things. We both have families and stuff.
He's got a family too?
Oh, yeah.
But there's never been a period where you're like, no, fuck you, I'm done with this shit.
Yeah, there's been many periods like that. Sure. Absolutely. Are you kidding me? Yeah.
Do you plan to work together again?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure at some point.
But we're vague.
I'm going to be real vague about that one, but we're taking a hiatus.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Is he going to do some solo stuff or what?
I'm not sure what he's going to do.
This doesn't sound like a healthy relationship at this point in time.
Yeah. Yeah,
all right.
I don't care what he does.
Oh,
That
boy.
son of a bitch.
But that's not to say we wouldn't hear any solo material from Aaron, because on November 15th, 2013, he released Gener's Gone, the final demo recordings of Gene Ween, 2009 to 2011, featuring 6 original tracks direct to Bandcamp. The note attached to the upload reads as follows. These demos represent the final writings and music of Gene Ween, before he departed and the inner Freeman emerged. On that note, we have received a 2-word personal statement from Aaron. Stay tuned. After 20 plus years of near-fatal drug and alcohol abuse, thankfully culminating with an intensive but successful rehab, Aaron Freeman, aka Gene Ween, was left in a dire financial situation. All proceeds will go directly to Aaron as he continues down the path towards creative freedom and personal health. Payments will be processed via Aaron's manager, Dave Godowski. Don't worry, you can trust him. Opening track The Champion is like a harsh synth workout anthem. Big Devo or 80s Sparks vibes. At the beginning, we can hear some studio chatter from Dean, affirming that these are really just Ween outtakes rather than proper Freeman songs. Which isn't surprising given the fact that Diener used some Ween recordings on his Dean Ween Group albums. While that central synth loop is super satisfying, the song is a little repetitive at 4.5 minutes. I would be kind and call it meditative and trance-like, but I think Gene shouting over the whole thing makes you acutely aware of the song the whole time. Nature Man is a fanciful, gender-bent folk track, which feels very much like an early Bowie song, a la Letters to Hermione.
Mr. Nature Man comes to me like a little girl.
Next is bouncy ballad Baby Don't Be Afraid, which, while being a pretty fun composition, I especially like that meter change during the bridge. I think it could have benefited from some weird and interesting production choices, like a pitch shift or some cool lead guitar elements, rather than just, the live sound. I know it's a demo, but so was Baby Bitch, though I do love that breathy whistle solo at the end. Deep Calm is one that I can so easily imagine double-tracked with some rich flangy guitars, White Pepper style. But apart from some weird walk-downs between sections, nothing here blows me away compositionally. But the lyrics, which read, "Welcome back to the land of the living," definitely sell the liberation felt by a person finally living their lives sober for the first time. I also love the way the song just cuts off at the end.
Gone so long in.
Stay With Me Daddy is the most richly produced track on the album, with double-tracked vocals and stereo panning. This easily could have been slotted right into the track list of Aaron's forthcoming Freeman album, and I think it's kind of a shame it'll be relegated to obscurity here on this Bandcamp page for all eternity. Finally, there's Gener's Gone, a sort of meandering piano-backed eulogy for the character of Gene Ween, which references players from the Ween mythos, like the Stallion. Aaron pulls out his goofiest voice on the whole project, really embodying Gene Ween this one last time. Gener's Gone as a project wasn't mind-blowing, but it was hugely important for fans at the time, since it confirmed that Aaron wasn't hanging up the hat and entirely retiring from making music. In the liner notes for Gone, Aaron had written, "Stay tuned," and fans did just that, biding their time until 8 months later, when on July 22nd, 2014, Partisan Records released a new full-length LP, Freeman.
This song is called Covert Discretion.
The opening track, Covert Discretion, was a song born out of crisis, written about the January 24th, 2011 Vancouver incident, where Gene, much higher than usual on stage, put on a pretty poor performance. The lyrics give us a first-hand account of the context surrounding that disastrous show, and his headspace, both before and after. From the lyrics, I think we can piece together the vague sequence of events. On the road, Gene was lonely and strung out, spending most of his waking hours in beige-colored hotels. One night, he ran into a couple of Ween fans at the hotel bar, who bought him a drink, then did coke with him in the bathroom. Feeling overwhelmed, he lashed out and secluded himself. The next day, still on a bender, he performed poorly at the show, which was videotaped by many fans and immediately posted online, sparking ridicule. Thankfully, the whole situation served as a wake-up call, causing Aaron to pursue sobriety and being with his family over the touring and partying lifestyle, which would eventually lead him to quit Ween. The linchpin that ties the whole project together for me and kind of acts as the thesis statement for the album is, man, you gotta end this. Just walk away. Your money or your life. Then, so save your judgment for someone else and be grateful. I saved me from myself. I think I speak for all of us in saying that we are grateful, and it seems like Diener is currently on that same path. The song itself is some of Aaron's finest work ever, with a sweet, intimate folk section transitioning into a massive, defiant, Queen-esque stadium rocker towards the end. What an opener. Following it up is the English and Western Stallion, a total departure from the Ween Stallion pentalogy, both sonically and thematically. Instead of being a mythical, hot-headed entity, the stallion, or should I say stallions, are analogies for clashing cultures, the competition between the Eastern and Western hemispheres, and the inescapable otherness that distance inspires. Aaron also hints at the feeling of inevitable war, the tension felt since the Cold War between East and West, that always seems to be looming on the horizon. Musically, English and Western is an upbeat pop rock track, beginning with barbershop-esque a cappella vocals before transitioning into a sugar-sweet and smooth full band sound, reminiscent of the most accessible tracks on White Pepper. You do start to miss Diener though when it comes to the lead guitar, which has that simple Jeaner quality of basically just being the melody played as a solo. Diener would have no doubt thrown in some weird notes or effect in there that would have elevated the song. But this is when it really sinks in that it's just Gene this time. For a While I Couldn't Play My Guitar Like a Man was one of the first songs written for the album, a down-in-the-dumps blues about not being able to enjoy your passions anymore, which is something that I think everyone can relate to at some point or another. Featuring maybe my favorite part on the entire album, this gorgeous harmonized guitar refrain leading into a super soulful solo. Like a Man is the song that really sells you on how great this album is. For lack of a better comparison, this is the transdermal celebration of Freeman for me. El Shaddai is an Eastern-flavored epic, seemingly inspired by the Torah. Featuring gorgeous, vivid lyricism and ultra-satisfying production, I wouldn't blame you for wondering if this song, too, was divinely inspired. And man, that slide refrain is so great. If this was the music they played at synagogues, I'd be there every Saturday. Black Bush is the most Ween track thus far, with Gene doing a silly voice while singing about crabmen, woodpeckers, and chipmunks, before fervently praising a euphemism for vaginas in the chorus. Once again, it's the little choices in the instrumental that really sell it for me. This time I especially love that bubbly, fretless bass sound throughout.
The jewels in the sea.
I also appreciate that the band credited for this track are just called the Black Bush Boys. Contender for most niche band of all time right there. Gimme One More is a down and dirty rocker with maybe the catchiest hook on the entire record. It is a little repetitive, but purposefully so, as you're lulled into a hypnotic state over the 5-minute runtime. It's also maybe Gene's sexiest song of all time, especially that second verse. And I hope you know it's taking immense restraint on my part to not put that nude picture of Gene in here. More Than the World is a sweet folk rock track with a main riff bearing a striking resemblance to Dig a Pony by the Beatles. And just as if it was straight off Let It Be, it also has reverb-soaked organ droning in the background during the hook. Next is All the Way to China, a psych folk track with mythical lyrics a la The Argus. More praise of the divine feminine, more talk of love rescuing you, the standard Freeman fare at this point. And despite being a great song, it's exactly at this point in the tracklist that you start to miss a little bit of that Ween weirdness. We needed a So Many People in the Neighborhood or Blarney Stone to mix things up. White Pepper understood this well, with Bananas and Blow and Ice Castles deviating from the soft pop rock formula. Golden Monkey is the longest track on the album at over 5 minutes, but thankfully that central instrumental refrain is so satisfying that the track reaches a sort of flow state. Aaron somehow managed to perfectly emulate the sound of falling rain through that doubled guitar and piano part. We also get some weird Middle Eastern background vocals on the bridge, which inject the song with a little can't put my finger on it flavor. There's also a rare instance of something close to an instrumental refrain, with the end of Golden Monkey bringing those perks from Black Bush back in. If More Than the World was Dig a Pony, Delicate Green is I've Got a Feeling. I would say tentatively that this is my least favorite track on the album. Not bad, just sort of unmemorable. That said, the backup vocals from fellow Rounder Records alum Tracy Bonham are pretty sublime. By the way, Tracy also played the violin on El Shaddai, so with the second most credits on the album under Dave Godowski, I guess she's the closest thing to an official member of Freeman. There Is a Form is yet another mythical, abstract depiction of relationships and gender politics, like Woman and Man from La Cucaracha. Again, not much to say about this one. The chorusy backup vocals in the end are pretty nice, but this is yet another smooth, soulful pop rock track. Finally, there's I Know a Girl, which is the closest thing to a Brown moment on Freeman. A little Lead Belly-esque lo-fi refrain from Gene, which skips around and loops for over 2 minutes. And honestly, it's really nice. Feels like a warm bath of analog noise. Not a bad way to end the album. It definitely makes you want to flip the disc over to hear the ultra hi-fi production of Covert Discretion again. Freeman was well received by critics, but many fans who were hungry for something browner were disappointed by how accessible it was sonically. But it's hard to deny the fact that the songwriting is strong. Tracks like Covert Discretion, Guitar Like a Man, El Shaddai, and Gimme One More are up there with the best of Ween. I just think album cuts like Delicate Green could have benefited from some weirder production choices, which someone like Andrew Weiss could have introduced. That said, I do think it's the single strongest Ween spin-off record. I even put it higher than Z-Rock Hawaii. And in April of 2026, it was repressed and released on colored vinyl for Record Store Day, for a new generation of fans to own. In November of 2015, Ween announced that they were reuniting, which would remain the state of affairs for 9 years, until the current hiatus, which went into effect August 2024. When it was announced that their August 6th show was cancelled, many speculated that Gene had relapsed, though Gene would later take to Twitter to write, "Hey guys, I've been getting tons of messages. Know that I'm perfectly fine and just as disappointed. Love, Gene." In time, we found that the real reason for Ween's radio silence was that Dean was taking time to focus on his mental health and spending time with his family, much the same way Gene had in 2012. And not for nothing, but that hiatus lasted a little over 3 years, and we're still well within that window. In the meantime, there's nothing stopping the Gene Ween Band, Freeman, or even just Aaron on his own from performing, so we can always hope and pray. And to Aaron, who was able to create a masterpiece like Freeman, largely on his own, all I have to say is, give me one more. That would mean more than the world to me.
Ocean sound. Yes, I found it on the ground, emulating the ocean sound. Bring forth the smallest cast unto me. Let's be forever, let forever be free.